My comments are basically linked to Sialkot and the role which Sialkot continues to play in Pakistan's exports. And in fiscal year 2019, Sialkot contributed a little over $2.5 billion to export receipts. The encouraging aspect is that most of these exports came from the SME segment of the industry. And Sialkot Chamber now has one of the highest memberships in the country, with over 8,000 firms registered with the chamber. And I think I could focus on three aspects here. What has worked for Sialkot, what hasn't worked, and what needs to be done. So in terms of what has worked, of course, the numbers speak louder, and it's the adaptive collaboration of Sialkot's private sector, successful cases of public-private partnership with the government, ability to engage with the world despite of connectivity issues or weaknesses of connectivity infrastructure. And over time, the list of items exported by Sialkot and countries to which these exports have reached, the list of those countries has also increased, which is commendable, and something which we also saw in the previous presentation as well as the presentation by Faizan Saab. Now, we also heard that what hasn't worked, for example, surgical and sports continue to remain two of the oldest industries of Sialkot. Now, the ability to consistently move towards higher value-added goods within these two industries has also been a challenge, and remains even a far more acute challenge for other industries. So we continue to produce a lot of traditional goods which have been around for several decades. So if we are producing decent sports goods, for example, which are finding a good market abroad, the ambition now should be to move into higher value-added goods. Now, the unit price of some of the sports items, which is higher than the traditional ones, like, for example, the golf industry or the cycling equipment, for example. These are the high value-added sports industries in which we are still missing. In the surgical sector, for example, again, the set of production which we are currently engaging in is fairly traditional. And this begs the question that why has it been a challenge to move up the sophistication ladder? And first, of course, the fast changing fiscal policy faced by Sialkot. And of course, it's not the business community that can do something about it. It's the macroeconomic environment that also needs to improve. Then, of course, there is some regulatory uncertainty. So apart from the certainty around fiscal policy, the certainty of regulatory system is also much needed. Many of the benefits which are allowed to, for example, the special economic zones or the priority special economic zones should also be given to the zones in Sialkot. Deeper engagement in CPEC, and our colleague from China correctly pointed out some of the ways in which this engagement can be deepened. I was in Sialkot last year, and Sialkot Chamber was very vocal about the fact that most of the delegations who have come from China usually only went to the federal capital or the provincial capital. Those delegations were not being brought in large numbers to Sialkot. And this has prevented business-to-business partnerships to grow. And then, of course, consultation process is also important with regards to when we sign the free trade agreements. So the business community was genuinely concerned. They wanted to be consulted more when we negotiate our free trade agreements with China or any other country, so that those products in which they have a competitive advantage, those products can also reach China. The energy constraints have been of another key concern to the private sector in Sialkot, and they continue to voice their concerns about it. So it's not just a certain supply of energy, it's also the certainty of the price structure in energy, the certainty of tariffs in gas and power, which the industry often feels that the tariff structure keeps changing. Now, what needs to be done? I believe that we need to invite deeper public-private dialogue here, and a public-private dialogue between the federal government and Sialkot's private sector, and between the provincial government and Sialkot's private sector. And one needs to make a conscious effort that Sialkot's businesses are part of the foreign delegations led by heads of states. I don't think that commercial attaches can represent Sialkot the way Sialkot can represent its own self. They need to be in those high-level delegations which are led by heads of states. And also Sialkot's presence in the regional chambers of commerce, including the SAARC chamber, joint China-Pakistan chamber, Pakistan UK Business Council, or Pakistan US Business Councils. This Sialkot's presence in these chambers is essential. And perhaps where CPEC can help is the engagement with city-specific chambers in China, which will help. The other issue is with regards to urban development in Sialkot, and that's the second main sort of proposal under what needs to be done. Urban development still remains a key challenge. We wanted to hold a large conference in which participation from over 40 countries was being planned, and we just couldn't find as many hotel facilities in Sialkot, for example. So you can't have physical meetings. Of course, you can overcome that barrier in the short term, but from the perspective of medium to longer term, we want to bring more people to Sialkot to see the success story, to engage with businesses. And urban development, the development of Sialkot as a city which becomes an engine of growth is very important from that point of view. I was also told last year about significant rise in skill shortages in some of the industries. And I am hoping that University of Sialkot, of course, will fill in some of these gaps, but a more integrated approach is required, where more sophisticated skill set can be made available. And when I say integrated approach is required, we need to integrate the efforts by Samida, TEVTA, PISIC, Central Bank, PDMIC. All these institutions are doing very good work. It's all about integrating these efforts. We are opening incubation centers across the country where even little industry infrastructure exists to mentor those incubation centers. And I believe that we need more incubation accelerators around Sialkot, where you have mentorship available, basically. And I think that's the kind of approach which we need to take to also introduce the new technology going forward. And this is the introduction of new technology is one area where development partners can help. Of course, Sialkot doesn't need to wait for knowledge or technology transfer from abroad. But if the development partners in Pakistan, if the donor community in Pakistan can help to make linkages between technology promotion institutions in, for example, the European Union region, in the US, in Asia Pacific, with Sialkot-based businessmen, it's that sort of knowledge and technology transfer collaboration which donors can bring in here. And probably I can say as a last word that my institute, Sustainable Development Policy Institute, SDPI, continues to have a very deep, comprehensive, long-standing relationship with Sialkot Chamber, and we look forward to helping on the lines which I have just mentioned. Thank you, and once again, it's been an honor to present our views.